She was only 24 when her life changed forever. One rainy evening, Emily was driving home from work when a truck skidded across the intersection and slammed into her car. In a matter of seconds, everything went dark. When she woke up days later in a hospital bed, the doctors delivered the words no one ever wants to hear: "You'll never walk again." Emily felt her entire world collapse. Her dreams of traveling, dancing, even walking down the aisle one day shattered. Months went by, and despite therapy, her legs refused to respond. Depression settled in like an unwelcome shadow. She withdrew from her friends, from her family, from life itself. One morning, her car, still wrecked from the accident, was finally towed back to her home. A local mechanic had been assigned to salvage what was left. His name was Jack, a tall, quiet man in his 40s, with grease-stained hands and kind, watchful eyes. Emily barely paid attention when he came by. She just assumed he was there to do a job. But Jack noticed something others overlooked. He saw the young woman sitting in the wheelchair by the window, staring out at nothing. He saw the tears she tried to hide. Days later he returned, not with car parts, but with something unusual, a homemade contraption, an odd-looking frame with gears, springs, and padded supports. Jack had been working on it late into the night in his garage. Emily frowned when he explained. "I used to build custom modifications for race cars," he said. "But I thought, maybe I can build something for you, something to give you a chance." At first, she laughed bitterly. The doctors had already said no. Who was this mechanic to think otherwise? But Jack didn't argue. He simply set the device down and told her, "Sometimes the experts are wrong. Sometimes you just need someone who refuses to give up on you." Something about his words struck her. Maybe it was the sincerity in his voice, or the fact that he had no reason to care, but he did anyway. With hesitation, Emily agreed to try. The first attempt was painful. Her legs trembled, her body resisted, and she nearly gave up. But Jack was patient. Day after day he returned, encouraging her, adjusting the device, cheering for even the smallest progress. And then, one afternoon, the impossible happened. Emily placed one foot forward, then another. She cried out, not from pain this time, but from disbelief. She was walking, supported by Jack's invention and by his unwavering faith in her. Her parents, who had almost lost hope, rushed into the room in tears. Emily's life had been given back, not by a doctor, not by a specialist, but by a mechanic with a heart too big to ignore a stranger's suffering. Months later, Emily stood on her own at a local community event. She gave a short speech sharing her story, and as she spoke, Jack stood quietly in the back, wiping his hands on a rag, too humble to take credit. Emily ended her speech with words that left the entire room silent and moved to tears. Sometimes angels don't come with wings. Sometimes they show up in oil-stained overalls and remind us that miracles can be built with kindness. And for the first time since her accident, Emily didn't just feel like she was walking again. She felt like she was flying. The days that followed became a rhythm Emily had never expected. Every morning, she would hear the soft knock at her door, and there Jack would be, holding a cup of coffee for her mom and a quiet smile for her. He never pushed her too hard, but he never let her quit either. Sometimes, when Emily's frustration boiled over and she cried out that it wasn't worth it, Jack would kneel beside her chair and say, "You don't have to believe in yourself right now. I'll believe enough for the both of us." Those words, simple yet steady, carried her through moments when her spirit almost broke. One evening, after weeks of effort, Emily managed to walk 3 steps without collapsing into the chair. Her mum gasped, covering her mouth with trembling hands, and her father, who had tried to be strong through it all, wiped away tears he didn't bother to hide. For Emily, it wasn't just walking. It was proof that hope wasn't gone, that life could still hold surprises worth fighting for. Jack, standing a few feet away, only gave a small nod. "Told you," he said quietly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Emily realized something then. Jack hadn't come back because of the car, or the money, or even pity. He came back because he couldn't stand to see someone's light go out when he knew he could help reignite it. The device he built for her wasn't perfect. It clanged and creaked, and sometimes it pinched in uncomfortable places. But it was a bridge between the life Emily thought she had lost and the one she was slowly reclaiming. With every step, she felt less like a patient and more like herself again. Word spread quietly in the community. Neighbors came by to see Emily practicing in the driveway, supported by the contraption Jack had built. Some offered encouragement, others whispered in awe. A few even asked Jack if he could build something for their relatives struggling with mobility. He always shrugged, embarrassed by the attention, but he never said no. As months passed, Emily grew stronger. Her movements became less mechanical and more natural. She could stand without trembling, walk short distances without support, and one afternoon she even danced a few steps with her father in the living room. The music was soft, the steps uneven, but the moment was perfect. Through it all, Jack stayed in the background. He fixed her device when it broke, adjusted it when her needs changed, and showed up even on the days when she felt like giving up. He never asked for recognition. He never asked for anything at all. But Emily knew the truth. Without him, she wouldn't be standing. Without him, she might never have believed again. One spring afternoon at a small local gathering, Emily stood at a podium, her legs steady beneath her. She shared her journey, the accident, the despair, the endless days of hopelessness, and then the arrival of an unlikely hero. Her voice shook as she said, "The doctors told me I'd never walk again. But someone who fixes cars taught me that sometimes the people who repair engines can also repair hearts." The crowd fell silent, many brushing away tears. At the back of the hall, Jack shifted uncomfortably, wishing the spotlight would pass him by. But when Emily caught his eye, she smiled through her tears and whispered just loud enough for him to hear, "Thank you for giving me back my steps." That night, as she walked out of the hall with her parents on either side, Emily realized something remarkable. Life had broken her in ways she never imagined, but it had also introduced her to kindness she never thought existed. And though she didn't know what the future held, she knew this. She was no longer just surviving. She was living again. Because sometimes miracles don't come from hospitals or headlines. Sometimes they come from the hands of a quiet mechanic who refuses to let hope die.